Understand how a promise acts as a placeholder for future results, making async code cleaner than traditional callbacks. This example demonstrates the creation of a promise object and the use of the .then method to handle both success, okay, and failure, error. But in this example, you can see that we are getting okay, which means this is a success response. So let's move on and look at an example that bettered this. So here is my boilerplate code. We want to look at how promises work in JavaScript. And like I already said about promises, a promise in JavaScript is simply something like I will give you a result later. Something like JavaScript promising us that it will give us a result later. And what kind of result will it give later? The reason for promises in JavaScript is because of how async code works in JavaScript. Async code takes time because there could be situations whereby you are doing something like reading from a file, and the file might happen to be a file that is voluminous, or you are reading from a content that has a large capacity and will take time before it gets processed. So async code, when doing things like this, takes time. And so JavaScript now introduces these promises in order to help handle the success or failure of an async process. So promises is what will let us know whether the process of that async code is successful or not. And it has two states. The first state is a pending state, which indicates that this is still running. And the second one is fulfilled if your action is finished successfully, and the third one is rejected, which symbolizes a failed process in JavaScript. So in my script section, I have added some couple of comments in order to guide us on what to do in this example. So let's follow it and go ahead. And in my HTML section, I also have a comment that requires us to do something here too, if you can see. So let's start from here. Now, this instruction says the result of the calculation is, that means this comment is no longer needed in this example. I used it in the previous example, so I'll take it out, and then I can move inside my script tag. Add a function called my displayer, create a promise object. Async code that might take some time goes here, then display the result. So the first thing says that we should add a function called my displayer. So I'll go ahead and make that function my displayer, which is our function name, and then it will take just a parameter of some, and then inside it I can do document.getElements by ID. So this function is what is going to output our results at the end of the day. I have a function already called my displayer function. So let's move on, and then the second instruction says create a promise object. What I deleted is not needed in this example. So I'll go ahead and make a promise. And how do you make a promise? You use a promise constructor to create a promise in JavaScript. So I will assign it to a variable called my promise. So this is the promise constructor. And inside this promise constructor, I'm going to pass the function. And that function has resolve and reject. Now, if you look at what I have on the screen, the resolve will signify if a process is successful, and the reject will show error if a process is not successful at the end of the day. Now, the reason why you are saying resolve and reject is because inside the promise, JavaScript automatically provides two functions. So the resolve for success and reject for failure. So JavaScript created them automatically for the promise. I am not the one who is just creating this function, and you are not the one who is going to just create it. So these are like built-in functions in JavaScript that when you need them, you just call them in order to achieve the purpose of what you need in your code. So if a promise succeeded, then the result will be what will return back to you. And if it fails, then what you will get is the other one that corresponds to reject, as you can see on the screen. So let's move on and write the next step in our code. Now, I can just say OK equals to true. Now, this is one of the way to find out if an action or a process is successful or rejected in JavaScript. So what we want to do here is like what we normally do in conditional statements in JavaScript, that you can do something like this. Let sum equals to 10. And then you go ahead and say, okay, if sum is less than 10, then you had conditions, blah, blah, blah. So those kind of things. That exactly is what you want to do here as well. So this is like a variable inside promises, and we want to test for this variable that you can see here. So I'll go ahead, and the next thing will be to use an if statement to test a conditional. And so I will pass it in. If OK, then I want to resolve to be OK as the output. So I'll pass in a string for OK, like this. Then I'm going to pass an else statement. If it's not, then bring an error as an output for me. Now that I have this, I've been able to test for what I have here personally myself, to know if the process is successful or not. So now that I have this conditional statement, then I can go ahead and call my variable, my promise, with a .then method. So this .then method is a method peculiar to promises in JavaScript. So this also is another built-in method for promises in JavaScript. I'm not just creating it from scratch. It's a method that I'm just calling. Now, and what is the purpose of this .then? You can use it to chain commands together. So I'll go ahead and call our function and pass in a value. And then I will call our displayer, which is this function here. Then also I will pass the error part and call the displayer function in order to show me whatever is the outcome from this if conditional statement that I have here. And if you look at my screen, you will notice that I am getting OK as display. Now, this other comment that we have under here, they are just something that I could put in our code here. So because this is where the background code is going to work, and then this is where I am calling our function in order to display results. So this is what is giving us a result. So those two comments are not basically doing something separate aside from what they are intended to do. And you can see that on the screen. You can see OK as the output that is coming out, which means that JavaScript has tested for this conditional using promises in order to detect what is happening. But if I change this from true, you will see that it is going to return the other part to false. Now you should see error. So you can see that the result of a promise is also like a condition, like a Boolean output, true or false. Now, a promise represents a future result. It can succeed using resolve method or fail using reject method. We use .then method to handle the result when it becomes available. So like I already said, that the .then is a method that is available to use alongside promise, and its purpose is to handle the result when the result of what you are trying to use promises for is available. So promise simply means wait for results later. So just few takeaways from this example. Promise handles async operations. Resolve method equals to success, and then reject equals to failure. Then the .then method handles the result when it is available.